The night Lena Marsh lost everything, it was raining. Not the dramatic kind of rain that shows up in movies right before something important. Just cold, quiet rain, falling on a girl sitting on the front steps of a house that used to be her home, with one bag beside her and nowhere in the world to go. Her mother had died 3 weeks earlier. Cancer, quiet and fast, the way the worst things always are. And her father, the man who had always loved her sister Serafina more, had always made Lena feel like a second draft of someone better, looked at her across the kitchen table and said the words she had been trained her whole life to expect. This house belongs to Serafina. You are your mother's, not mine. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. 23 years of small cruelties had already done the work. So Lena sat in the rain with one bag and the phone number of a woman named Mary, who ran a shelter on the east side. She was trying to decide whether to call when the black car stopped in front of her. The window came down. The man inside looked at her the way no one had ever looked at her before. Not with pity. Not with disgust. With something that looked almost like recognition, like he had been searching for something and was surprised to find it sitting in the rain outside a house that didn't want it. You look like you're deciding between two bad choices, he said. Lena looked at him. What's the third option? He almost smiled. Get in the car. His name was Wolf, 31 years old. The kind of man whose name made other powerful men go quiet. She would find all this out later. That night, he was just a stranger with warm eyes who drove her to a hotel, paid for a room, and left without asking for a single thing in return. She told herself she wouldn't fall in love with him. She lasted 11 days. 5 years followed. 5 years of his world becoming her world. Of learning to love a man who had more enemies than friends and more walls than windows. 5 years of being the woman beside Wolf, the one who learned how he took his coffee, which nightmares woke him at 3 a.m., which silences meant danger, and which meant peace. 5 years of believing she was enough. She was not paying attention to the small things then. The way he kept one photograph locked in the bottom drawer of his desk. The way certain songs made him go somewhere she couldn't follow. The way, sometimes, in the dark, he whispered a name that was not hers. Serafina. Her sister's name. In his mouth. In the dark. Lena heard it the first time and told herself she had imagined it. The second time, she pressed her face into the pillow and breathed until the tightness in her chest passed. The third time she already knew. She just wasn't ready to know that she knew. And downstairs, in the locked drawer, her sister's face smiled up from a photograph that had never once been replaced with hers. There are things a woman learns to live with when she loves a man who does not love her the right way. Lena learned them one by one, the way you learn a bad road, slowly, with your eyes open, pretending the cracks aren't getting deeper. She learned that Cashin lit up differently when Serafina visited. Not obviously. Not the way foolish men do. Loud and careless. Subtly. Like a lamp turning up 1 small degree when a certain person walks into the room. His shoulders would loosen. His voice would soften. He would laugh easier, laugh longer. The real laugh that Lena had worked 5 years to earn and Serafina collected without trying. Serafina was beautiful the way weapons are beautiful. Sharp, deliberate, designed to cut. She had their mother's eyes and their father's talent for saying cruel things in sweet voices. She visited Cashin's estate every few weeks, always with a reason. Business, a favor, a social call, and always left Lena feeling like a chair that someone had moved 2 inches to the left. Still in the room. Just slightly wrong. Lena never said anything. Because what would she say? Your eyes are different when she's here. You breathe differently. You called me her name in the dark and then held me tighter, as if that made it equal. She kept these things in a private room inside herself with the door locked and the keys swallowed. Until the morning, she found the medical file. She had been looking for a pen in Cashin's study. The bottom drawer was not locked that day. She would wonder later if that was accidental, or if some part of him had wanted her to find it. Inside, beneath the photograph of Serafina she already knew about, was a folder. Inside the folder were 5 years of records. Every visit Serafina had ever made to the estate was logged. Every gift Cashin had quietly arranged for her. A business rescue, funded anonymously through 3 shell companies. A debt erased. An enemy quietly removed. 5 years of Cashin Wolf loving her sister in silence while Lena slept in his bed and believed she was chosen. She closed the drawer. She sat down on the floor of the study. And she placed both hands over her stomach, over the secret she had been carrying for 6 weeks, the secret she had not yet told him because she was waiting for the right moment. There was a small life growing inside her. Small as a whisper. Strong as a vow. And she understood now, sitting on the cold floor of the man she loved, that she had been a substitute all along. A warm body to fill the space Serafina had not yet agreed to occupy. A placeholder given 5 years and mistaken for permanence. She did not cry. She had learned that crying was something she did alone. She simply sat there with her hands over her stomach and began, for the first time, to plan. Serafina came to the estate on a Tuesday, which Lena would remember forever because it was the most ordinary day of the week for the most extraordinary betrayal. Lena was not supposed to be home. She had planned to visit Mary at the shelter. Mary, who had known Lena since the rainy night years ago, and Mary, who was one of the 3 people in the world who knew about the pregnancy. But Lena forgot her phone and came back early. She walked in through the side entrance and heard voices in Cashin's office. She stopped in the hallway. She would later understand that stopping was the worst thing she could have done. That she should have walked in or walked away. That standing still in a hallway listening was the exact position that gave her all the pain and none of the power. Serafina's voice was soft, careful, perfectly arranged. I didn't want to tell you this. You know how much I hate involving myself in your business. But I love you too much to stay quiet. A pause. Then, she's been passing information to the Reyes family. For months. I have photographs. Transaction records. I wouldn't have brought it to you if I wasn't certain. Silence from Cashin. The kind of silence Lena knew well. The cold kind. The dangerous kind. The kind that came right before a decision that couldn't be undone. Why would she do this? His voice was low and flat. Because she's never been loyal to you. She came to you with nothing, Cashin. People who come with nothing will sell anything they can reach to get something of their own. Another silence. Lena stood in the hallway with her hand pressed flat against the wall, her heart beating so loudly she was afraid it would give her away. She thought about walking in, about showing herself, demanding to see these photographs, making Serafina say these words to her face. She didn't move, because 5 years of living in Cashin Wolf's world had taught her one thing about men like him. When the decision was already forming in their eyes, walking into the room didn't stop it. It only confirmed it. She slipped back out the side door. She went to Mary's. She sat in the little kitchen that smelled like old wood and strong tea, and she told Mary what she had heard. Mary held her hands across the table and told her to leave. That night. Take nothing, just go. He won't believe you over her, Mary said. He never will. You know why. Lena knew why. She went back to the estate that evening because she had nowhere else to go, because her money was in an account Cashin controlled, because leaving that night with nothing meant disappearing into a city that had already thrown her out once. She told herself she would find a way to show him the truth. She had until Thursday. On Thursday, 2 of Cashin's men came to the estate and asked her to come with them. Politely. Quietly. The way dangerous things always begin. The warehouse was not far from the estate. That was the detail that would stay with Lena longest afterward. Not the pain. Not the cold of the concrete floor. But the fact that the man she loved had been close enough to hear her if the walls had been thinner. Close enough to drive to in 4 minutes. Close enough to save her if he had wanted to. He had not wanted to. She knew he was there before she saw him. She heard his footsteps. She had memorized those footsteps over 5 years, the particular weight and rhythm of them, the way they slowed when he was thinking hard and quickened when he had already decided. These footsteps were slow, deliberate. The footsteps of a man who had made his decision before he walked through the door and was now simply arriving to oversee it. The warehouse door opened. Cashin Wolf stepped inside. He did not look at her the way he used to look at her. That was the first blow, heavier than anything his men could throw, because she had loved his eyes for 5 years, and now they were flat and foreign and aimed at her like tools instead of windows. He stood near the door and spoke to his men in a low voice. Instructions. Cold and precise, the way he gave all his instructions. She had admired that precision once. She understood now what it felt like to be on the receiving end of it. Cashin. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. Look at me, please. He did not turn fully toward her. Cashin. Look at me. Something in her quiet made the men shift slightly. They had expected screaming. Lena had moved past screaming before they even brought her here. She crossed the floor to him on legs that had already begun to shake. Everything hurt. The drive here had hurt. The cold of this room hurt. But she crossed that floor because she needed him to see her face when she said what she was about to say. Because she still believed, even then, even after everything she had heard in that hallway, that if he looked at her face he would remember who she was to him. She dropped to her knees in front of him. Not in defeat. In the desperate, deliberate way of a person spending the very last thing they have. Her hands found his leg. She held on. She looked up at his face, which was turned slightly away, jaw tight, eyes fixed somewhere above her head as if looking directly at her was a thing he had decided not to do. I am carrying your child. Each word slow and placed carefully, like the last of something precious being set down. 6 weeks. I was going to tell you this week. I was waiting for the right moment. Her grip on his leg tightened. Whatever Serafina told you, whatever she showed you, I need you to look at me right now. Look at my face, and tell me you believe her more than you believe this. She took his hand. She pressed it flat against her stomach. He did not pull away immediately. That was the thing that would haunt her longest. Not the pain that came after, but those 3 seconds when his hand stayed where she placed it. When she felt him feel her, the warmth of her body, the reality of her beneath his palm, and she watched something move behind his eyes. Something that was not quite gone yet. Something that knew her. She held her breath. She believed for those 3 seconds that it was going to be enough. Then he looked away. He removed his hand slowly, the way you remove something you are trying not to break, and that gentleness was its own particular cruelty because it meant he knew exactly what he was doing. He stepped back. He turned toward the door. And in the quiet voice he used when a conversation was finished and the decision was made, he said 2 words to his men that she did not fully hear. Then he walked toward the exit. Please. The word tore out of her. Raw and real, and nothing like the controlled voice she had managed until now. Please. Not the baby. Cashin, please. Not the baby. He stopped at the door. She watched his back. The shoulders she knew. The neck she had pressed her face against on his worst nights. The hands she had held. She watched every part of him that she loved, standing still in a warehouse doorway, and she prayed with every piece of herself that he would turn around. 1 second. 2. 3. He walked through the door. It closed behind him with a sound that was not loud, just final. The way the last page of something sounds when it turns. What followed, Lena would not describe to anyone for a long time. Not to Mary, not to the therapist she would see years later in a quiet office in a quiet city. Some things do not have words that are big enough to hold them. Some things live only in the body, in the memory of cold concrete against her cheek, in the specific silence of a room after something irreplaceable has been lost. She lay on that floor when it was over. She did not know how much time passed. The hanging light above her swung slowly. The cold came up through the concrete and into her bones. She pressed both hands over her stomach the way she had been doing for 6 weeks without thinking, the small, automatic gesture of a woman protecting something. The stillness that answered her told her everything. When Mary arrived, she found Lena on the floor. Not collapsed. Not broken in any visible way. Sitting upright against the wall with both hands flat over her stomach and her face completely dry and her eyes open and focused on the middle distance. He was there, Lena said. Her voice was calm in the way that comes after all the feeling has burned through and only the facts are left. He was standing right in front of me. I held his leg. I begged him. A single breath. He put his hand on my stomach and then he walked away. Mary sat down on the cold floor beside her and put both arms around her and held on without saying anything, because there was nothing to say. Lena sat in the warehouse, where her child had died, with Mary arms around her. She did not cry. She had used all of that up on the floor already, used it on the man who had walked through the door. What was left was something else entirely. Quiet and cold and permanent. The feeling of a woman who has just watched the last reason to stay walk out of the room. She sat there until she was ready. Then she made a call. Serafina. She had one last trade to make. Serafina arrived at the small room where they were keeping Lena, looking exactly the way Lena expected her to look. Fresh. Dressed for celebration. Wearing the small private smile of a person who has just won a game no one else knew they were playing. She stood in the doorway and looked at her sister on the narrow bed, bruised, hollow, wrapped in Mary's spare jacket, and her expression didn't change by a single degree. I came because you asked, Serafina said. Make it quick. Lena looked at her sister and felt nothing that surprised her. Not hatred. Not grief. Those were feelings that required energy she no longer had. What she felt was colder and cleaner than either. She felt like a woman with nothing left to lose, which is the most dangerous feeling in the world. Take my place, Lena said. Serafina blinked. The smile shifted, uncertain for the first time. Tonight. At the altar. He loves you. He has always loved you. I was just the version of you that agreed to stay. Lena's voice was flat and completely steady. Take the name. Take the estate. Take the man who let his people do this to me while I was carrying his child. You can have all of it. Every beautiful, rotten piece of it. And what do you want? To disappear. Completely. He doesn't look for me. You tell him I ran because I was guilty. You give him whatever story keeps him satisfied. Lena paused. And you let me go. Serafina was quiet for a long time. Lena watched her sister calculate, saw the exact moment the calculation resolved into agreement, the way you see a door close from across a room. He'll know eventually, Serafina said. When he lifts the veil. By then I'll be gone. Another silence. All right, Serafina said. Lena reached into the pocket of Mary's jacket. She pulled out a small square of paper, folded twice. A sonogram image, black and white, grainy, 6 weeks of a life that no longer existed. She held it out. Leave this for him. Not today. After. When he's had enough time to be happy. She looked at her sister. I want him to know what he ordered. I want him to carry it. Serafina took the paper, without looking at it. Lena stood. She straightened the jacket. She walked to the door. Lena. Serafina's voice, for one moment, was almost human. Did you love him? Lena stopped. She thought about the 11 days before she fell. The warm eyes in the dark car. The coffee she learned to make exactly right. The nightmares she had learned to wait out beside him without touching him until he was ready to be touched. Completely, she said. That was the problem. She walked out. Mary was waiting. And for the first time in 5 years, Lena Marsh moved through the world with no one's name on her like a brand. Cashin Wolf had stood at that altar for 4 minutes before the doubt arrived. He had dismissed it. He was good at dismissing things that inconvenienced him. It was the same skill that had let him watch a warehouse camera feed and tell himself the woman begging was lying. He was less good at it now. Doubt had developed teeth. The veil came up. The face beneath it was beautiful. The right kind of beautiful. The kind he had wanted for years. The kind he had measured every other face against. It was Serafina. Not Lena. Serafina. In Lena's dress. In Lena's place. Wearing the expression of a woman who had decided that winning was worth whatever shape the victory took. Cashin did not make a scene. He was not a man who made scenes. He looked at his new wife's face for 5 full seconds. Then he turned, walked off the altar past 300 silent guests, went to his office, and locked the door. He found the sonogram on his desk. He did not know who had left it or when. He only knew that it was there when he sat down, a small square of paper folded twice, and when he opened it, the image was immediately clear to him because he had been the son of a woman who had kept her own sonograms in a box he found after her death. He knew what he was looking at. 6 weeks. A small gray shape. And on the back, In handwriting he recognized because he had seen it on grocery lists and notebook margins and small notes tucked under his coffee cup for 5 years. 2 words. She knew. Cashin sat in the locked office for a long time. Then he started making calls. Not to find Lena, not yet, because that would have required admitting what he already knew. First, he called the 2 men from the warehouse. Then, he called the man who had intercepted Serafina's phone 3 months ago on a routine security sweep and filed the recording without ever telling Cashin because Cashin had not asked. He listened to the recording. He heard his new wife's voice, careful and soft, arranging a lie with the precision of someone who had been building it for years. He sat with the sonogram in one hand and the recording playing on his phone, and he understood, for the first time, the full cost of what he had chosen. He had chosen his obsession over his family. He had chosen a beautiful lie over a plain truth. He had chosen the sister who performed love over the woman who simply lived it, quietly, daily, in every small, ordinary way, for 5 years. He did not cry. Men like Cashin Wolf do not cry easily. But his hand shook, and the sonogram crumpled slightly in his grip before he smoothed it out again and laid it flat on the desk. He looked at it for a long time. Then he began to look for Lena. It took him 3 years. The city Lena chose was nothing like Chicago. Smaller. Quieter. The kind of place where people left each other alone because they were all, in their own way, recovering from somewhere else. She found a job at a small architecture firm doing the bookkeeping she had taught herself during 5 years of quietly managing Cashin's legitimate accounts. She found a flat with large windows and no locks that couldn't be opened from both sides. She found, slowly and with great caution, a life. His name was Daniel. He was an architect, gentle in the way that people who have also been broken are gentle, carefully, deliberately, as if they have learned that everything can shatter and have decided to hold things softly because of it. He knew about Cashin because Lena had told him, because she had decided after the warehouse that she would never again carry something alone that 2 people could carry together. He had listened. He had not tried to fix it. He had simply stayed. She was happy. Not the burning, desperate happiness she had felt with Cashin, the happiness that always had an edge of terror in it because it felt borrowed. This was steadier, quieter, the happiness of a woman who has paid a terrible price for her peace, and therefore does not take it lightly. She was at the firm on a Tuesday when her phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. She answered. Lena. His voice. Exactly the same. Somehow she had expected time to change it. She sat very still. I need to see you. No, she said. She was surprised by how calm she sounded. She had imagined this call for 3 years in all its possible versions, and in none of them had she sounded this calm. I will come to that city with enough men to shut down every exit if you make me. I will make noise. I will make problems. A pause. The voice of a man who understood that he was using the last weapon available to him and was not proud of it. Or you give me 3 days. 3 days. Then you can walk away, and I will never find you again. Lena looked out the window of the firm at the quiet street below. 3 days, she said. My conditions. My timeline. The moment you break either, I leave and you let me go. Say it. Your conditions. Your timeline. I swear it. She recognized his swearing voice. In 5 years, she had only heard him break one sworn word. She had been there for that too. I'll come tomorrow, she said. And Cashin. She paused. I'm not who I was. Don't expect her. She hung up. She sat for a moment. Then she called Daniel and told him the truth, the way she told him everything. He was quiet on the line. Then he said, come home first. Don't go from there. She went home first. And for one night, she let herself be held by someone who held things gently before she went back to face the man who had held her like something he owned. She had forgotten how large the estate was. Standing at the iron gates on the first morning, Lena looked at the building she had called home for 5 years and felt nothing she expected to feel. No pull. No grief. Only the strange clarity of a person returning to a place in a dream and finding it smaller than memory made it. Cashin was waiting on the steps. He looked older. Not badly, just marked, the way men who have carried real guilt get marked. It lives in the eyes first, then the jaw, then the shoulders, which no longer carry themselves as if the world owes them room. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at her. She looked back, equal, unafraid. The 3 days were not what she expected. She had prepared for begging, for performance, for the calculated charm she had once loved him for. Instead, she found a man who had spent 3 years taking himself apart and putting himself back together more honestly, and who now sat across from her at tables and told her the truth in plain sentences. He told her about Serafina, that he had dismantled her life the same systematic way she had dismantled Lena's. Not with violence, he was past that or trying to be, but with the legal and financial tools of a man who controlled enough of the world to make another person's existence very uncomfortable. Serafina had signed documents. Serafina had left the country. He told her about the recording, about the warehouse, about sitting in the locked office with a sonogram for 6 hours before he could stand up. On the second day, he told her something she didn't know. The night of the Reyes ambush, he said. When the car was hit, Lena went still. I was told it was Serafina who pushed me clear of the second shot. I believed it for 5 years. I had it documented. It was part of why he stopped. Why I believed her so quickly when she came to me with the lie about you. He slid a folder across the table. Security footage, time-stamped, clear. The woman who had pushed Cashin out of the bullet's path 3 years before the warehouse. The woman who had taken the shot in his place and spent 2 weeks recovering quietly without ever asking for acknowledgement, was Lena. Serafina had arrived after, had knelt over a bleeding Lena and accepted the credit she did not earn. Lena looked at the footage for a long time. You didn't know, she said finally. It wasn't a question. It wasn't forgiveness. It was simply a fact being filed in the right place. No, he said. I didn't know. She closed the folder. She stood up. And she said the sentence she had been carrying for 3 years like a stone in her chest. I begged you, Cashin. I looked at you, and I said your name, and I told you about the baby. And you turned away. He didn't flinch. He didn't explain. He simply said, yes. That night, Lena sat alone in the room with the unlocked door and breathed and understood that truth was not the same as healing. That a man could tell her everything and still not be the right man to walk forward with. She already knew what she was going to do on day 3. She packed her bag on the morning of day 3. She did it slowly, the way she did everything now. Deliberately. Without panic. She folded each item neatly, which was a habit from the years after the warehouse, when learning to do small things carefully had been her way of reminding herself that she was still capable of care. She set the bag by the door. She went downstairs. Cashin was in the main hall. He had known this was coming since last night. She could see it in him. 5 years of learning to read his face had not left her entirely, and what she read now was a man standing at the edge of something with no ground beyond it. Don't. His voice was quiet, not commanding. That was different. Lena, please. I'm not leaving because I hate you, she said. I need you to understand that. I stopped hating you about 1.5 years ago. It takes too much energy, and I need it for other things. Then stay. He stepped forward. She didn't step back, which surprised him. I will spend the rest of my life making this right. Whatever that looks like. Whatever shape you need it to take. You can't make it right, she said, very gently. Not cruelly. Just honestly. That's not how it works. The baby is gone. I can't get back the 5 years I spent being your second choice. I can't rebuild what I had to destroy myself to become. She picked up the bag. But I'm whole now. I'm genuinely whole. And I need to go back to the life where I get to stay whole. Lena. Daniel is a good man. She said it clearly, not to hurt him, because he deserved the full truth. He holds things gently. I need that now.
Cashin's face changed.
She watched it, watched the calculation and the grief and the pride and the love all arrive at once in his eyes, and she felt it. She would not pretend she didn't. A deep and honest ache for the man she had loved completely in the wrong circumstances. She walked toward the door. He moved faster than she expected, not toward her, backwards, to the center of the lobby. And when she turned at the sound, She saw him already on his knees, both hands pressed together, his forehead almost touching them, and in his right hand the gun she had seen him carry for 5 years. "If you walk out," he said, and his voice cracked for the first time, the voice of a man who had run completely out of options and defenses, "I will not be here after." She stood still, the bag in her hand, the door 3 meters away. She looked at him on his knees on the marble floor, and she remembered another floor. A concrete floor, a cold warehouse. A woman on her knees begging a man she loved to spare the life of their child, telling him about a life they had made together, begging him to stop. He had turned away. She turned back to the door.
Lena.
"Please." Her hand on the handle, the metal cold beneath her fingers. She pulled it open. The shot was loud. She had not expected the loudness of it. She had heard gunshots before, in 5 years of Cashin's world, and they had never seemed this loud. Perhaps because this one was not aimed at an enemy. Or perhaps because she was not braced for it the way she was always braced in that world. Always waiting, always tensed, always ready for the blow. She felt the warmth before she understood what it was. Against the backs of her legs, carried on the air, spreading fast and warm and unmistakable. She stopped walking. She was 3 steps down from the door. The street was ahead of her. The city, ordinary and indifferent, and full of people who did not know what had just happened in the lobby behind her, spread out in every direction. She stood still for 3 full seconds, and she thought about a concrete floor, about a cold that came up through the ground and into your bones, about a hanging light swinging above a woman who had pressed her hands over her stomach and begged the man who said he loved her, and the man had turned away. He had not come.
He had not stopped it.
He had watched, and he had turned away. She had lain on that floor and understood in the most absolute way a person can understand something, that no one was coming, that the only hands she had were her own, that if she was going to stand up, she would stand up alone. She had stood up alone. She had walked out of that city alone. She had built something alone. She had learned, slowly and with great difficulty, to be held gently by someone who understood that holding gently was a skill, not a weakness. She thought about Daniel, about the window seat in their flat where she did the firm's accounts on Sunday mornings with the light coming through, about the way he had said come home first because he understood that she needed to leave from a place of strength and not from a place of running. She thought about her mother, who had loved her quietly and completely, and whose death had thrown her into a cold rain that led to a black car that led to 5 years of loving someone who never quite chose her back. She thought about the baby, who had no name, who had kicked against her hand every morning for 6 weeks, and then was gone. She had kept walking then, off that floor, and through that door, and across a border, and into a life that was genuinely hers. She kept walking now. The street received her without ceremony. The city continued around her. She did not look back, which was not because she did not love him. She did. She would carry some version of that love for the rest of her life. The way you carry the memory of a wound that has healed but changed the shape of you, but because some doors you do not open twice. Not because you're not strong enough. Because you finally are. She walked until the estate was behind her and the street ahead was just a street, full of ordinary people living ordinary lives, and the bag in her hand was light because she had packed only what was hers. And somewhere in the quiet center of herself, in the room she had built out of everything that had tried to break her, something settled into place like the last piece of a thing that had been unfinished for a long time. She took out her phone. She called Daniel. "I'm coming home," she said. And she was. If this story reached you, if you recognized something in Lena's silence, in her folded hands, in the way she kept walking, please know, the door has always been open. You just have to be the one to turn the handle. Like, share, and subscribe for stories that go straight to the heart.